We're in a series, if you weren't here last Sunday, we're in a series examining who Jesus claimed to be. Because as I described last week, there is nothing more consequential to your life or to mine than who we really believe Jesus to be. You see, people all over this world think different things about Jesus. Many people all over our world agree that Jesus was in fact a great leader. It's hard to deny that. Many people will agree that Jesus was a great teacher. It's hard to deny that. Many people agree that Jesus founded Christianity that has radically transformed lives for centuries now. It's hard to deny that. But Jesus claimed to be far more than all of that. And if Jesus was in fact who he claimed to be, the implications to you and to me are enormous. So we're taking time over the next several weeks to study how Jesus introduced himself to various groups of people. Now, these introductions, as all introductions, are contextual. They're contextualized. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going into a business meeting and you're representing your company to some customers. When you walk into that meeting, you're probably not going to introduce yourself as in this way, in my case. Hi, I'm Jeff Jackson. I'm Cameron and Morgan's dad. Now that's true. That might be true about you, but that introduction does not fit that context. Well, throughout the New Testament, Jesus, in various contexts, tells people, let me tell you who I am. And it's the sum total of those introductions. It's the sum total of Jesus' self-claims that help us to fully understand who he claimed to be and why it matters to us. Now, last week, we started this series in the context of this. Jesus had just fed over 5,000 people. And when many of those people came back for seconds, wanted another fish sandwich, Jesus introduced himself this way. He said, look, I know you're here for physical food, but I am the bread of life. And last week, we talked about what that means about Jesus' identity. This week, we're going to watch Jesus introduce himself again, this time in a different context. Let me share with you a bit about the context of Jesus' introduction that we're going to study this week. Jesus had left where he lives up in Galilee, by the Sea of Galilee, and made his way southward to the city of Jerusalem. Because Jesus was going to Jerusalem, according to John chapter 7, Jesus was going to Jerusalem to celebrate a Jewish festival that took place there every year called the Feast of Tabernacles. He was there to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, what did the Feast of Tabernacles celebrate? Jews celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles to remember and to celebrate how God had taken care of their ancestors after they left Egypt. Y'all remember that story, how God delivered the Israelites from the hand of Pharaoh in Egypt? And for 40 years, the Israelites wandered in the wilderness. Well, while the Israelites were in the wilderness, God instructed them to build a tent of meeting, a tent where he would dwell among them. We call that tent the tabernacle. That tabernacle was, you can think of it as a mobile place of worship. It was they could take it down and move it to another place. Well, over that and while the tabernacle was in place, all the Israelites camped around that tabernacle. Well, where the tabernacle was, there was a cloud over the tabernacle. That cloud represented God's presence among the Israelites. And I want to read to you how this cloud above the tabernacle worked. I'll read to you a few verses out of Numbers chapter 9. Watch this. On the day the tabernacle, the tent of the covenant law, was set up, a cloud covered it. From evening till morning, that's at nighttime when it's dark. From evening till morning, the cloud above the tabernacle looked like fire. That is how it continued to be. The cloud covered it, and at night it looked like fire. Whenever the cloud, now watch this, whenever that cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. They moved to another place. Wherever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped there. At the Lord's command, the Israelites set out, and at his command, they encamped. So it was this cloud that looked like fire at night that led the Israelites through the wilderness all of those years. Okay, the Feast of Tabernacles celebrated that. One of the ways the Feast of Tabernacles worked was in the temple complex there in Jerusalem, where Jesus was. In that temple complex, in the women's court, near where the offerings were collected in the temple, for this festival, they would set up these huge candelabras, these big lamps, to represent the way that God's cloud that looked like fire at night led and provided for the Israelites during their wilderness wanderings. Okay, when Jesus introduced himself to this group, he was standing in the temple, in the women's court, near where the offerings were collected. Jesus was standing beneath these candelabras set up for this festival. If you'll allow me to skip forward past our sermon text this morning and look at John chapter 8, verse 20. John tells us that Jesus spoke these words, the words I'm about to read to you. He spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where the offerings were put. So here's the context. Jesus is standing there with these candelabras lit, representing the presence of God among their ancestors. And Jesus, in that context, speaks these words. John chapter 8, verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus said, I know what these candelabras represent to you, but I want you to know that I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. Now, like we did last week, that picture tells us much about who Jesus claimed to be. For example, light, when you think about light reveals reality, doesn't it? Said another way, light shows you what's really there. If it's dark, you can't always see well what's there. But if you shine light on it, you can see better what reality is. Let me share with you a couple of ways that Jesus reveals reality as the light of the world. Jesus, for example, Jesus reveals our shortcomings. When Jesus entered into our world as the light of the world, Jesus lived a perfect life. Now, here's why that matters. You and I like to live life based on the curve. I don't think I've told you this story before, but I remember to this day the lowest exam score I made at Georgia Tech. And I'm about to tell you, so don't think less of me. There was one statistics test that I took, and when the professor returned the test back to us, I opened my test paper. It's when we used to take them on paper, remember that? I opened my test paper and saw that I had made a 48 out of 100. Just so, 40 out of 100. I opened that and my heart just fell. I'm thinking to myself, okay, is it too late for me to drop this class? Is it too late for me to cut and run and get out of here? So I'm sitting there just agonizing over my awful test grade. And after the professor handed out all the test papers, he goes to the front of the room, I'll never forget this, and he wrote on the board in a graph form what the grades were. It turns out that the highest grade on that test was in the mid-50s. And after he applied the life-saving curve, my 48 was an A. Now, let me tell you something about Georgia Tech. You learn to ride the curve. The curve is your friend down there. But what works well in school does not work well when it comes to our performance before God. Because Jesus blew the curve. Jesus aced life. There is no curve because Jesus lived life flawlessly. And church, may I just tell you the hard truth. By comparison, when you and I put our lives up against Jesus, our righteousness looks like filthy rags. Jesus came into our world as the light of the world to reveal the truth about our shortcomings so that we can see ourselves as we really are. But before you get too down on yourself, Jesus also came to reveal our worth. Yes, we know something about our shortcomings because of Jesus. But we also know something about our tremendous worth because of Jesus. How much are you worth? How much is anything worth? Let me answer that question. Something is worth what others are willing to pay for it. Houses in our area, actually all over the country, houses today are worth more now than they were 5 years ago. You've noticed that. Now, they're worth more today not because they've been renovated, they've been expanded, they've been made better. No, they're worth more today because of supply and demand. People today are willing to pay more for your home. That's why they're worth more. Something's worth is determined by what someone's willing to pay for it. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 18. For you know, it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed, that you were bought back from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. Jesus Christ, God's Son, came into this world to lay his life down for you and for me, to reveal to us how valuable we are in God's sight. Jesus is the light of the world. He reveals to us our shortcomings, yes, but he also reveals to us how valuable and how precious we are to our Creator. Here's something else we learn about Jesus from this picture he gave us. Light enables navigation. That's why your car has headlights. It's hard to navigate well when you can't see where you're going. I think I shared this with you when it happened many years ago now. Catherine and I are sitting at home in our living room, and the power went out without warning. No one warned us, hey, the power may go out. No, it just happened all of a sudden. And we weren't ready for it. It was a cloudy night outside. I remember it was so dark in my house. You couldn't see your hand right here. I mean, it was dark. It was pitch black. The problem was my flashlights and phone, everything that I needed, I was in the living room downstairs. Everything I needed was upstairs in my bedroom, which is no problem, right? I mean, I know my house. I've been in this house 25 years. I know my way around my house. Nobody knows how to navigate through my house as well as I do. However, on that night, in the dark, a journey that I had taken thousands of times before became a great struggle. I was stumbling over things. I had to go very, very slowly. I had to feel my way from my living room to my bedroom. You see, without light, when you can't, Jesus said it this way, whoever walks in the dark does not know where they're going. Let me say, if you're trying to live life apart from Jesus. If you're trying to live life without the light of life, I'm just going to tell you what you already know. Life is going to be a struggle. You are going to stumble through life because without the light of life, you cannot see where you're going. Jesus came so that he could illuminate our path and live life well. Here's another thing we learn about Jesus. Light, as we know, can be reflected. Light, you shine light at something, that light can bounce off, it can reflect off of that object. Okay. Jesus said something else that in the context of this morning's sermon could be a little confusing. Remember when Jesus was giving his Sermon on the Mount? He said something there about light. Let me read to you a passage from Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount. This is in Matthew chapter 5. Here's what he said. He's talking to his followers, and he says to his followers, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, followers, let your lights shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Okay, question. How can Jesus be the light of the world? And at the same time, you and I as his followers, how can we be light of the world as well at the same time? Answer, because as Christians, we reflect the light of Christ in our world. Jesus is no longer here on earth, but his light reflects off of our lives. Catherine and I were outside the other night, and it was one of those nights where the sky was clear and there was a full moon. And that moon was brilliant. And we're out there, we're just marveling at the beauty of the moon. And we looked around and we could see everything around us because of the moonlight. But you know, there's really no such thing as moonlight. You know what moonlight is? Moonlight is reflected sunlight. The sun is shining on the moon is reflecting that light back, and that illuminated our world that night. That's the way we as Christians act. Jesus is the light of the world, but we as his followers reflect that light and illuminate our world. Christian, listen closely to what I'm about to tell you. As Jesus' reflector, you may be the only picture of Jesus some in your life may ever see. Christians, let's be sure that we keep our lens clean. Let's be sure that we are reflecting the light of Christ well, because many around us, their lives depend on it. Light can be reflected, but I want to finish with this one. There's something else about light that tells us so much about Jesus and the Christian experience, and here it is. Light overcomes darkness. Light always overcomes darkness. There is not a person in this room or a person watching that has ever gone into a dark room, flipped on the light switch, and wondered, I wonder who's going to win this time. In other words, I wonder if the darkness is going to win, or I wonder if the light's going to win. I wonder if when I flip on the light, I wonder if the light is going to overcome the darkness, or the darkness this time is going to overcome the light. No one's ever asked that question. No one's ever wondered about that. You know why? Because by its very nature, where light is, darkness has to flee. Light, by its nature, overcomes darkness. John, in the first chapter of his gospel, said it this way of Jesus. In him, speaking of Jesus, was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, church, Let me share with you what that ought to mean to us. You and I have been placed by God in a dark place at a dark time. You know that, and I know that. And I know some Christians that say, my goodness, it's so hard to be Christian right now because the world around us is so dark. Let me remind you of something. The light shines the brightest in the darkest places. You and I I say this often, Christians, you and I have an opportunity that few before us have ever enjoyed. You and I have the opportunity to let our light shine in a very, very dark place. When I was a kid, we used to sing a song. We used to hold up our finger. This little light of mine. Y'all know this song? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. You say, Pastor Jeff, in a world this dark, what difference can my little light make? I'll tell you what difference it can make. It can overcome darkness because we are reflecting the light of Jesus. We let our little light shine. Jesus boldly proclaimed, I'm the light of the world. That's who I am. I am the light of the world. If you want to know yourself, I can show you who you really are. If you want to know how to navigate life, I can lead you through life. If you want to make the world a better place, I can do it in your life's reflection of me. But I want to close with one final thing John said about this light. And I return to John chapter 1. This is in verse 9. Watch this. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Verse 12. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children not born of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. Which brings me to this final question for the morning. Have you believed in Jesus? Have you received into your life the light of the world? Does Jesus illuminate your path? Or is life for you stumbling in the dark? The good news is the light of life is offered to you. Because of what Jesus, the Son of God, did on your behalf, you can have the light of life in your life. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed. If there are those here in the room or watching online who would say, Pastor Jeff, I'm tired of trying to do life my way. I've stumbled for too long. I've roamed around in confusion for too long. I want to be guided by the light of life. I want to be who God tells me that I am. I would encourage you, if that's you, would you spend the next few moments of silence just having a heart-to-heart conversation with your Creator? Perhaps you would say, God, I recognize I'm not good enough, and I stand in need of your forgiveness. I believe Jesus, your Son, died for me to rescue me from my sin. And I believe he rose from the dead. And right now, I just want you to know, I'm placing all of my trust in what Jesus did for me to rescue me from my own sin so that I could know you personally. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Would everyone look back this way? You know, that's a profound conversation to have with your Creator. It's not one we gloss over lightly here. If you prayed along with me just now, or if you would like to know more about what it means to place your faith in Jesus, I would encourage you to stop by guest services on your way out, because back there we have some literature that more fully explains what Jesus did for you and what it means to place your faith in it. So please go by and receive that from us. It's our gift to you. We just want you to have it. If you're watching online and you prayed along with me, or you'd like more information about what Jesus has done for you, I'd love to mail this to your home. If you'll go to the website, imadeadecision.com, that's imadeadecision.com, there's a place there where we can receive from you your mailing address. If you'll provide that to us, I'll put that same literature in the mail to your home this week. Thank you for watching this video on First Redeemer's YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it, click like below and leave us a comment. And if you'd like more content like this, click subscribe and turn on your notifications. Thanks again for watching.